Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 20th edition of the Endless Celts podcast. I hope everyone's keeping well who's listening. It's sure to be a cracking show tonight, and with everything, all the talking points, the Celtic match on the weekend, the topic over the last 48 hours, the European Super League, will be getting stuck into both topics, and I'm glad to be joined again by Anthony. How are you, Anthony?
All good, Stephen. Obviously disappointed with the result on Sunday, but apart from that, can't complain.
I know we're all disappointed, but sure, this is what this podcast is for. You come on, you have a rant, and then have a beer after it, and all's good.
Perfect.
And then have our very special guest from a Celtic state of mind, JP Mason. How are you?
Good evening, both. I'm still recovering a little bit, but I'm kind of over it now. Do you know what I mean? It's Sunday was horrible, but you know, it's just the latest in a long line of disappointments this season. So you're going to become numb to them, I guess. So, no, very pleased to be here to join you tonight.
Yeah, glad to have you, man. Glad you come on, JP. Really appreciate it. But I know you said there. I'll come to you first anyway. I know you said, JP, that you're kind of over it, but for the last couple of days, and on the group chat especially that we're involved in, I've been venting my frustration. I've been just angry, just full of rage. On Sunday, we've seen a game where it was just, for me anyway, it was spineless, it was gutless, there was no passion, there was no effort. The players seemed to just check out. They checked out months ago, to be honest. Most of them, their heads are out the door. I know we had chances to take something from the game or even equalise to take it the extra time, but again, it's all ifs and buts. Yourself, JP, what's your overriding emotion when you look back in the game now you have 2 days to think about it?
I mean, it definitely feels like we missed opportunities. Well, clearly we missed opportunities, and I keep playing over and over that El Yunusi chance where you just. I saw somebody did a freeze frame of it, and you're just like, why did you not hit it? You know, you had all the time in the world just to leather it, put your laces through it, and it would have been a certain goal. Especially when you see the freeze frame from behind the goal, the way that McGregor's positioned. McGregor gets back into position after El Yunusi's taken that bad touch, and obviously, you know, McGregor's a good keeper. You know, he guesses right and he gambles on the hesitation, and then you know the Eddie chance. Oh my God, that Eddie chance! Of all the things you could have done in that position, doing a wee mad flick like that with the back of your heel is not the one that most strikers would have gone for. They would have just, you know. I think about Gary Hooper in that situation. Would Gary Hooper have done that? No, absolutely not. He would have just laces through it, buried it. Dembele as well, you know. Whereas Edouard, he just has this sort of, you know, well, he has acquired this kind of lackadaisical nature this season where you don't put your house on him scoring anymore. You certainly don't put your house on him scoring a penalty. Because I don't think anybody thought he was going to score that penalty when he stood up to take it. I think most people were just resigned to either go over the bar or being saved. But it's just I've checked out of this season now as well. I mean, I'll still watch the remaining games, and I'll, you know, I obviously still support the team, but. It's been a very, very, very bleak season, and amongst a bleak time, you know.
100%.
Yeah,
I think one of the most striking things from what you just said there, when you're talking about Edouard and his chance, everyone automatically assumes you're all about the chance when he had the penalty, but you're not. It says the chance where he could have whipped his ball over the foot and hammered on top of it.
Yeah, totally.
It's almost like, as you said. We're resigned. When Eddie stepped up for that penalty kick, I knew he was missing. And if you look at the replay, he looks up just before he hits the penalty at the spot he's going to hit it, and McGregor's made up his mind, and that's where he went. It was a pathetic attempt at a penalty kick. And the Moy chance, even without the freeze frame, which I haven't seen, but I really want to see that. All you need to do is strike that first time. There was no one around him to put him under pressure. And after you'll come to yourself, right here, it's a question that defied Celtic fans: Is Moy a £5 million signing for Celtic, or after that would you just be like, nah, move on?
We sort of touched on that a couple of weeks ago. You know, the El Yunusi conundrum, as it were, Stephen. There's no doubt that the man is a talent. He's a talented player, and you know, we tried to get him even as a permanent transfer before he moved down to England. But it's I'm not even sure if 5 million is the asking price Southampton are putting out, but that's a £5 million gamble for me. We've seen him play fantastic. Especially last season, and despite blowing hot and cold this year, like the entire team has, he's still our second highest scorer. But even going into the game, he'd obviously scored a couple of goals in the run up to Sunday, so you can't even blame a sort of lack of match sharpness for it. A freeze frame is the perfect way to describe it, as John Paul says, because he did freeze in front of McGregor. That's what's so frustrating about it. I wasn't confident of any of those three chances going away, which I think really kind of sums up the season. It was so frustrating. We spoke on Friday night that all the defenders and the midfielders had to be switched on and won their battles, and our attacking players had to be clinical in front of McGregor. That was in the key battle segment of the show on Friday. That was our main points, and we got absolutely none of that. It was like you say, a sorry day at the office.
Yeah, and another thing as well, I don't know about you guys, but what I saw was Scott Brown out of his depth again in a match like that. And I don't like to single out players. Scott Brown, Laxalt, Kenny, who again is the most boring player I've ever seen play for Celtic. He just makes me fall asleep. And it's like you're watching this, and we did speak about it on Friday. We did the key battle segment, which I thought was fantastic, because it's, if we can see that needs to happen, how come the Celtic coaching staff can't see that? Or when the players step on the pitch, they can't take up the authority to go and win them battles or win them challenges and put down a marker? I don't know about yourself, JP. Again, you can probably hear it in my voice. I'm just full of rage, to be honest. And Laxalt was an absolute disgrace, the Celtic shirt. That game, he shouldn't be in a Celtic shirt no more for me. Kenny should be sent packing back to Everton. And another great point was made again on your podcast, Celtic State of Mind. I can't remember who said it, so forgive me for that. But basically, that Kenny is Everton's version of Anthony Ralston. And if you think about it, it's true, because he's only really come up to us to get match fit and see where he goes next season. I don't know about yourself, JP, but even if you take away the chances we had, well, we had about 5 chances. I mean, it's all ifs and buts, isn't it, if we take them? But the whole game itself, when they scored the first goal, for me anyway, I just knew we were coming back in that game.
No, I agree. I think the nature of that goal, psychologically as well, it's just like, it was Stephen Davis, who's 36, scoring an overhead kick. I mean, I know it wasn't a Trevor Sinclair from the edge of the box in the 90s, which is still one of my favourite overhead kicks. I mean, I've always loved overhead kicks.
Zlatan against England.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, Zlatan. Oh, absolutely. It wasn't a display of acrobatic genius. It was an opportunistic strike, over the shoulder. It wasn't anything great. But it was coming from a 36-year-old Stephen Davis. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was playing the last time we went through a season and didn't win a trophy. Like, that's pretty mental to think that. And I think just the nature of the goal and the fact that it was they got the first goal yet again. In the games against us, I know we scored first against them in the last game, but in all the other games this season, they've scored first and then gone on to win. And I think maybe psychologically, the players just thought they've got the beating of us, which is mental to think that we've come off the back of winning everything for the last 4 years, and then suddenly you're getting to this stage of the season where you're just like, oh well, they've scored first. Oh well, that's it. And there's a resignation there, and you're looking at the touchline. Does John Kennedy inspire you? Do you get that fire? And you've got this sort of like cobbled together like coaching team of like Steve McManus with an earpiece in. Still don't know why he's got an earpiece in, because surely you can just communicate with everybody that's in the dugout with him. Maybe he's speaking to some data analyst up in the stand or something like that, but ultimately, I don't know if it's just to look cool. I like Stephen McManus, by the way. I'm not slacking him, but ultimately, it's a cobbled together like coaching team that, like, Gavin Strachan, John Kennedy, Stephen McManus. These guys had probably never had a conversation a year ago. Do you know what I mean? Together, and now they're just like thrown together and expected to be, the masterminds of the downfall of Rangers, and they're clearly not.
So, no, I mean, their masterminds probably their own puppet show. Definitely not the masterminds. I'm trying to get Rangers back down again. But another thing as well, Anthony, what JP touched upon, the Davis goal, the overhead kick, it wasn't a piece of amazing play. At one point during that build-up, Davis dribbled past about 4 of our players, and you're going to yourself, what's going on here? This guy is taking the piss out of us. Do you know what I mean? Sorry to use that phrase, but it's true.
No,
And you look across the pitch, and you look at the likes of Christie. I always said his head's away. You go into the midfield, McGregor. I just think he's jaded. He needs a rest, but there's no one to come up and replace him. And then you're looking at the centre back position. You have to rely on young Welsh to pull out these performances. What about yourself, Anthony? Looking at the game, for me anyway, it seems like we're going to be left with a skeleton squad next season with the amount of people who want to leave, the loan players who are going to leave. What's the answer? Because no one knows at the minute.
I think it's a very hard question to try and answer when we have so little communication from the people that run the club. We still don't know what sort of direction they want to go in with the terms of recruitment. We still don't have a manager in the door, and although they're on record as saying they want a director of football and have been saying that since November, we still don't have one of those either. I would imagine, like you say, there will be a massive overhaul of players. Like you say, I would imagine at this moment in time, I would say all the loan signings will probably return, including El Yunusi. And yeah, some of the players that you mentioned there as well already seem to have their heads elsewhere. And obviously the captain, he's northbound as well. It is a rebuilding job, the likes of which we may not have seen for a long time. We've had rebuilds of a sort under Brendan when he came. But again, I'm saying that I maybe thought we were going to need a big overhaul after losing the semi-final in 2016. But when you actually look at it, Brendan didn't actually ship that many players out, and he didn't bring that many in. He just improved what was already there drastically. You maybe go back to after Mowbray, and when Neil got the job first time, there was a big overhaul of players then. When Martin left, that was probably the biggest in terms of numbers, I think, for in terms of new players coming in. But, football's even moved on since then. You had a lot more time, even back then, to what you do now, just for the simple fact is these qualifiers now start so early. I'll be honest, I'm really trying not to think too much about the Champions League qualifiers because I just don't see us in any way getting through. We're on the wrong side of the draw.
They're in 91 days.
91 days. Well, there you go. Thanks, JP. There you go. 90 days. We're 3 months away. We have, like you say, a skeleton staff. Our new chief executive only really started yesterday, and that's still just in a transitional phase. We are no further forward with a manager or director of football. It's it's a mess. There's no. We're not on here to sugarcoat things tonight. There's a few dark days ahead, I think.
Definitely not. I think the podcast itself, we never really do. We always argue amongst each other, and it's good that way that we never really agree. But JP, going to yourself, you look at the lineup against Rangers on Sunday. I'll quickly go through it. Bain, Kenny, Welsh, Ayer, Laxalt, Brown, Christie, Turnbull, Calmack, Eddie, and Moy. You're probably looking at 3 or 4 of them staying next year, aren't you? Realistically.
Well, I mean, Welsh has just signed a new deal, which I was pleased about because, there's been a lot of departures of late. Frimpong leaving, even if you weren't his biggest fan, it was still another player saying that he didn't want to be there anymore and leaving. A lot of the young guys have been leaving, like Liam Morrison. That's my friend Michael's pal's boy, like Graham Morrison. It's his boy. I say his wee boy. He's not wee anymore, but so he's away to Bayern Munich and stuff like that. So I'm glad Welsh is staying. Obviously Turnbull will still be here, and Scott Bain looking resplendent in his goalkeeper strip. I think that's really funny how E-Tims always tweet that. They just say Scott Bain looking resplendent in his goalkeeper strip. That's all they ever really say about Scott Bain. It's quite a good patter, but he'll be here, and who else? Maybe Cal McGregor, but I would not be surprised if there was maybe an offer from down south for him. And would he go? Probably, yeah. I think he's probably a bit disillusioned with how things are. And then going around the rest of the team, it's everybody's probably got one-way tickets out of here. Ayer, has not actually said directly to the press that he wants to go, but his agent's made noises about it. He divides opinion, I think, but I certainly wouldn't want him to go. If there was any chance of keeping him, I'd want to keep him, just purely because I think he is, a good player. I don't think he's a great player, but I think he's a good player. And for stability going into next season, I'd love to keep him, but I really don't think it's going to happen. And then you go around the rest of them, probably all away. All the Loonies go back. Eddie, halfway out the door already as well. And whoever missed out, Christie. Yeah, he's definitely wanting to go. So
thank God for that.
Aye, well, yeah.
It's don't know how Stephen's going to talk about when he does go. I think he'll secretly miss him.
It's for me as well, Anthony. Like the likes of you look at the squad, and it's a very fair point. We had John Hurd on as a special guest just last week, and we were talking about when he was coming up for the youth ranks, the camaraderie, the squad spirit, the first team, the togetherness within the squad, the likes of Brown, Mulgrew. Them types of players are always close friends, and they made sure everyone knew in that dressing room what it was to play for Celtic Football Club. Why this season, Anthony, has all the squad from the start now? We're talking way back at the start of these European qualifiers, which was an absolute joke of what happened and getting put out that early as well. It's a shambles even to go back there. But why has this squad fell away so much in terms of attitude, in terms of graft, grit, passion, determination? Where's it all gone?
It's hard to say. I mean, the easy thing, because it's very well documented, you know that Neil Lennon is quite an abrasive character, and he does have the old school management system sort of way. He's in charge. He'll shout and roar and try and get his message across that way. But I think in a way as well that can be almost too easy of an excuse. I mean, you can't. I would even say that there was camaraderie in the squad, even this time last year. I mean, let's not forget, we did win. We were streets ahead in the league last year under Neil. We won a Europa League group stage, finished top of the group under Neil Lennon as well. And, the night, when you think of, the night against Lazio and, you seen the togetherness of the squad when they were celebrating then, it's really difficult. I think maybe had some players started to get noises from their agents throughout the COVID period, and then maybe when they returned, they weren't interested. A lot of the uncertainty, are we going to get fans back in? It's hard to really put. I'm as much as I've been critical of Neil Lennon on a lot of things, I think it is unfair to just completely say it's all because of him. The young striker that left in the January transfer window, I think he went over to America. I think his name's
Cameron Harper.
Yeah. Cameron Harper, that's it, yeah. I mean, he did more or less confirm that when he left, that that there were cliques forming in the dressing room. He didn't name names or who they were. I can imagine you would probably be able to guess who a few of them were. But he did paint a picture very much of a disillusioned squad. But which frustrates me, why that there isn't enough of the senior players in there to say, look, even if we are as that we don't want to be here, or as we can't be bothered by any of this, you could still say, but we've still got enough about us to be professional, and this time next season, all of us that want away this time next year will be away anyway, but we've got a job to do at the minute. So I don't think you could, but I think Neil's sort of approach to management will obviously have had an effect. And possibly, as John Paul was touching on there, the sort of dysfunctional coaching staff as well. Maybe one or two players sort of think, this is a far cry from the sort of high intensity sessions they were used to under a guy like Brendan Rodgers. And even perhaps some players have always said they enjoyed training with Ronnie Dyla as well, just with the sort of approaches that he had and his dedication to fitness and so on. But I'm at a loss to say how it's went so drastically wrong. You can point to a number of factors, but every time you try and justify it, it just comes off sounding like an excuse. I think as awful as I think the people at the top fell asleep at the wheel, as much as I don't think Neil was the right man for the job, and I said that before he got it and after he was announced, I think a lot of these players have got to have a good look at themselves as well. They've not used taken their own professional pride on and tried to get the job done. We all work with people, or we maybe are managed by people that sometimes we don't agree with, or we think they're going about things the wrong way. But you have your professional pride and you do your job to the best of your ability. And I don't think, maybe apart from one or two, you maybe got to cut the young lad Welsh some slack. He's just coming through. But apart from that, most of them haven't been at the races this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually glad you brought up the excuses element of what we're saying. But for me, I'm going to be clear here. I'm going to be honest, totally honest with everybody. Rangers have deserved to win the league this season. Rangers deserve to go through against them. They deserve to beat us on Sunday. Celtic have been absolutely woeful this season in every Glasgow derby match. We haven't laid a glove on them. We haven't turned up. We surrendered basically at the start of the season. So I'm not making excuses for Celtic. I'm just trying to read a wee bit into it to see why things may have went wrong. And JP, we have heard bits and pieces that Lennon actually wanted some of these players moved on, but the board rejected that opportunity to happen. Do you think this stems back to then? Because he did come out after a European game saying that some players don't want to be here, and then after that it kind of went quiet.
I'm sitting in exactly the same seat that I watched the game that night, and I watched him say that in the post match, and I just immediately went, "Oh my God, that is probably that was just an absolute hand grenade into the dressing room," because from that moment on, all the fans were basically like, "Who's he talking about?" And suddenly everybody became a suspect, as opposed to it just being like, "Oh well, we know who it is." The thing is, we didn't know who it was, so everybody was a suspect, and that immediately created. Brendan Rodgers, Tommy Burns has gone on about it before as well. The harmony, the synergy between the club, the manager, and the players, the manager, and the fans, and that synergy was disrupted with those comments. And we've spoken about it on ACSOM as well, and Paul's said many a time that it's been the perfect storm. And that's not, I don't think that is, excuses. And if any Rangers fans are listening to this, they'll be like, "Oh, your tears are delicious," and 55 and all that. It's not. I mean, as soon as COVID came into the equation, it made a situation that I think at that point they were like, "We're getting away with this. We're getting away with Neil Lennon as manager. Look at this. We've won our Europa League group. We've cantered away in the league. Rangers got beat at home off Hamilton. They were all crying out for Gerrard to get sacked. You can go back and look at Rangers fans' tweets if they've not deleted them, and they were all like, "Oh, we need to ship out all these players. Davis can go. His legs are gone. Arfield's not good enough. McGregor, we need to get a younger keeper now. Like McGregor's too, and Gerrard's clueless in Europe and." All this sort of stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, COVID comes along and completely decimates all of that. Then we get accused of being handed the league, even though there was nothing we could do about it. We wanted to finish the league. It's not as if Celtic were like standing in the steps of Hampden with pitchforks saying, "Oh, give us our league." You know what I mean? It's like everybody voted to end the league because there was no option, and that was what happened. But yet we are somehow accused of, Peter Law, has managed to coax the league title out of someone's hands, and it's like, come on, be serious. But throw COVID into the mix of an already very rickety car that the wheels are barely staying on probably, and you were leading up to a summer where a lot of those players probably were about to move away. COVID knocked that in the head because nobody was sure about money and all the rest of it, and add into the mix as well that these players have won everything for the last, now up until this season, everything for the last 4 years, every single title. And I said somewhere around November or December that I figured that there was maybe a malaise in terms of once you've done something so many times, yes, for us fans, it's great. But as professional players, they're like, well, what's the next challenge? It's like completing a computer game over and over and over. You don't do it. You buy a new computer game. And that's exact. It's horrible to think that that's what they think like, but they are completely different. And when you look at Kieran Tierney moving away before 9 and 10 in a row, if Kieran Tierney is willing to do it, then I'm sorry, but what do you expect from guys like Odsonne Edouard and Ryan Christie and Callum McGregor? So that's my thoughts, and I don't really think that's being, untoward. I think Rangers have been in a Ford Mondeo in cruise control on a smooth road where we are driving a Bentley over, rough-shod ground, and we're just like rambling around and off road, and they're just like, "See, is we'll just take this date then, since you don't want it." That's what it's felt like to me.
I think that's very well put. It's the modern day player, isn't it? As you said, unfortunately, as Celtic fans, we do have to accept that a certain type of player will want to come to Celtic and move on after a couple of years. And you always see people, especially Russell Boyce, you know Mel yourself.
Yeah,
he refers to the Stepping Stone FC, and I get his point totally. I do hate players that come up and use Celtic to get a move, but unfortunately, as we've seen over the last 48 hours, money talks, and it doesn't really matter about allegiances to clubs, and if they're foreign, if they're Scottish, they will eventually want to move for a better pay packet and to try something different. But it brings me on to the next point. So we're seeing this week that Dominic Mackay started on Monday. I put up a tweet yesterday just saying he had a bag. He was carrying a bag in the picture, and I was like, I hope this bag is filled with P45s for everyone associated with the catastrophe we've seen at Celtic Football Club this season. And then I left it there for a couple of hours, and then bang, 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 all these comments started coming through. And at first, I didn't notice it, but obviously the Celtic fans are looking at analysing everything at the moment. He's wearing a blue suit and has a blue car, so so at the moment, I don't think he's everyone's favorite person at the moment. But again, cut the guy some slack. But I'll go to you, Anthony, in regards to that. What are you expecting from Mackay this week? For me, I thought he would have come out already and spoke to Celtic or addressed the fans in some sort of way. But again, it's nothing.
Yeah. I must admit, I will cut him some slack for, I must admit, that the first couple of days, you've got to let the man literally get in the door first. I'm sure once he's been in and analysed the situation and see the sort of things the sort of things he wants to bring in the role, I'm sure he's got a background in communications as well as everything else that he did at Murrayfield. So I'm sure if there's one thing that we can look forward to under his tenure, it will be better communication with the supporters. That's certainly one of my hopes for him anyway. I did see a few of the comments about the tie and the colour of car. Also, I think of all the things I'm getting worked up about this season, he can wear whatever colour tie he likes as long as he cleans up the mess that he's about to sort of experience.
If you really want to go for the jugular, you had brown brogues on as well.
Oh man, that's well. I didn't see that, John Paul. Now that is unforgivable. Get him out. Get him out. Brown brogues. That's unforgivable.
It's a rugby thing, isn't it? I honestly don't care as long as he's fully committed and passionate about his job. Then you can wear a trackie every day. I'm not bothered.
See as well, JP. Obviously, just to go a wee bit more in depth into it as well, are you hoping to hear something this week? Or are you expecting kind of the status quo till the end of the season?
I think there has to be something this week, especially because we spoke about it on ACSOM, and we were like, well, it's either going to be announcing a new man or announcing something on the crest of a victory, or it will be, to numb the pain of a victory, to be like, well, here's the pick-me-up. So it'll be one of the two, surely. They've got to build on Sunday's disappointment with something, and it's just getting to the stage now where, I mean, if there hasn't been a decision, why not? And I don't expect somebody to come in right now. I think that's probably unrealistic. But you certainly want there to be a decision made so that it's like, right, this guy is starting on this date, and then we know what we're looking forward to, and we know that whoever that person or persons may be are able to start doing some work just now in the background, even although they'll not be, actually feet under the desk, so to speak, but they'll be able to start maybe assessing the squad, looking at targets, because this is all just going to come round so quickly. So I think, obviously Dominic Mackay hasn't actually started his position. He's just in basically shadowing, for the next couple of months until
Basically, that translates into learning all Peter Law's bad habits.
Yeah, well, I mean, he'll see what not to do, I guess. I do wonder. I do wonder as well about what the thought process. It'd be amazing to hear a conversation between the powers that be at Celtic to see what they feel about how this has gone. Because I mean, it has gone so spectacularly wrong. But it would be really interesting to know, if they're just sort of shrugging it off and being like, oh well, we've done amazing up until now, and blah blah blah, or if they actually are really affected by it. I'd be keen to know that. I wouldn't ever try and guess whether or not they are, or one way or the other, but it certainly would be interesting to know how they feel. Are they bullish about it? Are they like determined to sort of get the title back? Are they determined to rebuild their reputation in Europe after the kicking that it took this season? I mean, those two Sparta Prague games, my God, horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But yeah, I mean, he's here now. We've waited long enough. We've known. I can't even remember when it was announced that he was coming. It was a couple of months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, everything just feels so long. Everything at the moment just feels so long and drawn out. And I'm going to say something here before we move on. I'll come to you, Anthony, for this. I always in the group chat and stuff get called Mr. Negative, but again, I think I'm being realistic when I say things like this. The more this drags out, and the more Anthony knows what I'm going to say. I know he does. The more this drags out, and the more this goes on, Eddie Howe for me is not going to be the Celtic manager. What's your opinion, Anthony? The more this drags out,
I think regardless of whether he does become or not, I don't actually think all this silence is helping either party. To be perfectly honest, you're not a negative guy, Stephen. We wind you up, but you're a positive guy and a very good presenter, I must say. But I must admit, I don't think it is necessarily doing anyone any favours. But then again, their approach to it might just be, let the papers print what they want to print. They're going to print it anyway. It doesn't matter what you say. They'll twist your words to suit their own agenda, as we've seen with John Kennedy's comments last week, taken completely out of context. On the purely specifically on the Howe situation, we'll need to wait and see what happens with some of these vacancies that have came up in England now. But if he is a man of his word, we're led to believe that he's agreed to take over. So he's still my sort of bookie's favourite. He's still where my money is at this moment in time. But of course, this is Celtic. Anything is subject to change at any minute.
I mean, JP, I'll come to yourself for this before we'll go on to the next thing. But the way I'm looking at with Eddie Howe, just from my point of view, no one else's, that it can't be that hard to announce someone that's coming in at the end of the season. 8 weeks now have passed since Lenny's left. And again, when you the season kind of folded well before Christmas, it was done. Everyone knew it. Everyone felt it. There was no hope of catching Rangers. The European campaign was up in there. And we were just kind of, as you said, going along in a Bentley, crashing into hedges, not knowing where to go after it. So it's like, what's your opinion? Because I want to look at it from this angle. If Eddie Howe doesn't happen and Celtic put all their eggs in that basket, where do they go?
Well, there's a guy that keeps replying to a Twitter thread from last week. His name's Joe Morgan. If you're listening, Joe, good evening. And he is very adamant that John Kennedy is going to be the new Celtic manager or head coach, whatever you want to call it. Now, I've gone back to him and said, like, you've got to have some inside knowledge to be so sure about this. And I said, like, you're either going to be eating the whole humble pie, or it's going to be me on the other side of this coat, because there's no way in the world that I could possibly imagine John Kennedy getting the gig. But like I said, he's this guy Joe. I don't know him, but he's convinced, and he keeps sort of coming out with these kind of like be afraid, be very afraid, sort of very loaded statements. And it might be talking absolute shite, but I mean, it also might be there might be some truth to it, but I don't think there is. I think Eddie Howe would have denied it by now. Russell said this the other day. Eddie Howe would have denied it if there was nothing in it, and I think Celtic would have ruled him out as well, because it reached fever pitch, and like you've just said, or Anthony just said, that we're led to believe that he's agreed in principle to take the job. So I mean, if stuff like that was getting put out there, surely Celtic would have come out and went, actually, that's nonsense, and that's not the case, to stop the fans believing it, like clearly we are. So I don't know. It certainly is a weird one, and I can't recall ever being in such a position of being in the dark really about everything to do with the club. Like, even people that I know that I can ask stuff don't know anything. Like, they've not got anything to give me in terms of information about what they may or may not know. Not that I would reveal it on a podcast if I did, but yeah, aye. So that's my thoughts.
Well, for me, I hope Joe Morgan's talking absolute shite, to be honest, because I can't. If John Canley's Celtic manager, I'm jumping into the tide. Like, there's no hope. Like, and again, for me, like as you said, you're in the dark, and it's almost like you're sitting in a room with no lights on. You're trying to find your way around, isn't it? You're looking for answers. You're looking for clues, and I always get called out for it. And you know yourself, Anthony, I always go on Twitter and relay it back to the guys what I'm saying. They're like, stop reading Twitter. But sometimes I just can't help it. And when it gets in your mind, you need to talk about it and need to see where it's going to go. And that's why, personally, at this moment in time, and I said before, if it happens, I'll eat humble pie, of course. But Eddie Howe, for me, is not going to be the Celtic manager in the future. And at the moment, I firmly believe that. But moving forward, guys, we have a game tomorrow night. Yeah, tomorrow night against Aberdeen.
Oh, I saw we do. Aye.
Yeah. I mean, I forgot up until like 5 o'clock yesterday. It's like, what's going on? But I'll come to yourself, JP. Scott Brown's new club next season. So, what are we expecting from the game? Are you expecting any changes, rotation, new players coming in?
I mean, I read a little bit about the press conference today where it was Greg Taylor and John Kennedy. I think they were talking about how Rogic wasn't fit. I mean, Rogic wasn't on the bench on Sunday, was he?
He was. He was.
Oh, he was. All right. Okay.
I thought he was.
They were talking about Rogic anyway, and just saying how he wasn't fit and then he was fit or something like that. And then he did mention that there may be a few changes. I would expect probably Taylor to come back in. I don't mind Taylor, actually. I've never had an issue with him. I've liked him pretty much since he signed, and I would have far preferred him to play on Sunday. Not because I massively dislike Laxalt, more because I like Taylor, and I think he gives you a bit more grit and reliability, really, rather than Laxalt. So I'd like to see him come back in. Obviously, it'll be weird for Scott Brown if he's playing tomorrow, to be going up there knowing that he's going to be in the home dressing room next season. I think that's a weird thought for all of us. But I mean, it ultimately means nothing now, doesn't it? It's just this is all about just playing out the games, just counting out time, which is horrendous to be doing that in such like grim fashion. But such is life, and a Wednesday night trip up to Pittodrie would have been a good laugh as well. It would certainly have been extremely, extremely drunken. I've not been up to Pittodrie for a while, a couple of years, but the trips up there are always good crack, and it's always a good sing song as well.
As you said right at the start of the show, we've kind of checked out for this season, haven't we? To be honest, guys, and
yeah,
the four games left, and as you said, we'll watch. We always want Celtic to win, but for me, it should be about who's going to be there next season. What players can we put in? Young players who can impress, and maybe for the new manager coming in, get them in the squad for next season. And if they coming to yourself, are you of that opinion? These games should be just firmly used now for people who will be there and will be playing for Celtic in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, if we were only to do that right enough, but we'd be struggling to get 11 guys on the park with the amount of players that will possibly be leaving. But yeah, on a serious note, I do think, for example, that Sorrow should play instead of Brown tomorrow. and perhaps I would probably play a Yeti up front as well. I can't even really say you would play him in Klamala because I don't know if is Klamala away yet.
I think he's away.
I can't. There's I think he was talking going over to America. So yeah, I would start guys like a Yeti and Sorrow tomorrow and for the rest of the season. That's not necessarily because they're going to be there next year. I mean, you just don't know what this new manager, whoever he may be, will want. But I would be very surprised if guys like Brown start tomorrow, especially tomorrow night. But obviously the connotation, as John Paul says about him, obviously he'll be in the home dressing room next season.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm expecting as well. I don't know, guys. It's like I'm looking at this from now till the end of the season. As JP said, it's just dead rubber games, and that's being brutally honest about it. And the season's over. For me, it should be guys who are 100% committed playing for Celtic, who's going to be in that squad. I don't want to see, being harsh, I don't want to see Kenny, Blackcelt, even to a certain extent, Eddie in a Celtic shirt now from the end of the season. I just don't, I can't see a case for him playing anymore. Maybe Eddie, if he has a few more performances, to increase his transfer profit. But again, that's just looking at it from a totally selfish point of view, isn't it, really? But I'll go to yourself, JP. What's your lineup prediction?
Oh, well, I mean, has Ralston even been in there? Was Ralston on the bench on Sunday?
Yeah, he was benched. Yeah.
Well, there's a chance Ralston might start then. But I mean, if Ralston starts, then that's Kenny Dunn in a Celtic shirt, really. I mean, we'll know that for a fact.
If Ralston,
if Ralston starts tomorrow, he'll never kick a ball for Celtic again. And from the comments and things I heard from a lot of people after Sunday, then that wouldn't be any great shame to a lot of folks. So, and I can see Taylor coming back in. Bain will start in goals, so it'll be Ayer Welsh centre half. Midfield will probably be where he mixes it up. He might bring in maybe somebody like Ewan Henderson. Is he not
on loan to Dunfermline?
Oh God, he is. You're right. God, that's right. A big spate of them all went out at the same time, didn't they?
Loads of them did.
Connell went out, and that's right. Henderson was gone as well. So, in actual fact, then I am not sure what he'll do with the midfield. I think, right enough. Sorrow probably will maybe get the nod because of the Brown thing, just purely because it might be a bit weird for Brown playing in that game tomorrow. I don't know if they ask Brown the question, do you want to play, if he'd say yes or no. I don't know. I actually had to check to see that Stephen Glass was actually in position as manager, because I didn't know if he'd actually started the job yet, because I don't know, I've not been paying attention to anything other than Celtic, because well, you don't normally, do you? But so he's in position. I think a Yeti is such a weird one for me, because a guy commented on ACSOM yesterday saying that he lived in Bow while Ayeti was at Bow, and he was the talk of the town, and really, really highly rated, and he was banging in goals left, right and centre. And then he just had that mystery season at West Ham, and he's had arguably a mystery season with us as well. And you just wonder what the hell's gone on with him in the last sort of 2 years or whatever, because whatever went on at West Ham is carried on here, because if he was that good, he would be starting every week. I mean, we paid £5 million for the guy, and he's not really done that much, I mean,
not worth 5p.
A handful of goals at the start of the season when he was supposedly still finding his fitness, and we're led to believe he's still trying to find fitness now, and we're in April, you know what I mean, as is Griffiths, which is just it's just daft to me. So I do wonder about Ayeti and where we go with him from here, and whether he wants to stay or whether he wants to leave or whatever. I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on that, because is he another player that wants to leave already, and he's not even completed a season with us? So I
wouldn't be surprised.
I would play him to give him a chance tomorrow night, because I certainly don't think Eddie deserves his jersey after Sunday.
No, you're 100% right, and that's what I'm saying. That going forward, it's vital to play players who will potentially be there next season. What about yourself, Anthony? What have you gone for in terms of your lineup?
Yeah, I think Scott Bain will still look resplendent in the jersey tomorrow. I'd imagine left back, I agree with John Paul. Taylor will come in, depending on if Ralston's up for it, you might find Kenny will play it, or it might be light for light. The back two, yeah, Ayer and Welsh, can't really see any change there. Main change, I think it'll be more or less the same team as Sunday, with the exception we might have Sorrow for Brown, a Yeti for Edward, and that would maybe allow him to partner up with El Yunusi, like they did at Bal. We've not really seen much of that partnership this year, unfortunately, because apparently they were very good together when they played there. And yeah, that's. I think there's, because you can't really necessarily trust any of the guys that would come in either. They've not really had a body of work behind them this season that you can say, well, we can rely on him because such and such isn't pulling his weight. I think those are probably the obvious changes, but whether or not that equates to any improvement in performance, that we'll just need to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I went with Barkas in goal because I still think personally, I think there's a keeper in Barkas. I always say that. I just think it's down to coaching and stuff he's received this season, because he was Greek number one. He was playing well for AEK Athens in the Champions League. He played against us as well. So there has to be something in this guy. There has to be. And I think he needs to run the games just to see for one final chance if there's a keeper there. I've also went for Ralston, Welsh, Ayer, Taylor, Sorrow at the defensive side of the diamond, Rogic, Cal McGregor, Turnbull, Ayeti, and Moy. That's what I've went for in terms of my lineup. But yeah, I heard your voice there, quick a wee bit there when I said Barkas, but it's just my opinion on the guy. I just think it's this season of all seasons to come in and I don't know, his confidence just seems shot to bits, doesn't it really? And hopefully a new management team can build him back up again, because I want to see him a couple more times in the Celtic jersey to see if he can produce. But moving on, guys, I said at the start of the show we'll be touching the European Super League, and it's towards the end of the show, where it quite rightly should be, because it's an absolute disgrace of what's been proposed over the last 48 hours. They come out at like 11:15 at night, and it's like, what's the point of even announcing something at that time? Do you know what I mean? But JP, I'll go to yourself first for this. What's your overriding reaction to that?
Well, I've been like trying to digest it really and get my head around it, and I went down to Troon yesterday. I had the day off, and I just went down to Troon just to remind myself what the sea looked like as opposed to the city. And I was sitting kind of near this guy who had his phone on full blast, and he was watching some sort of Sky Sports thing. So I was hearing snippets of what they were talking about on that, and just it appears that a lot of these clubs that are signed up to it are all in real financial bother, and they see this as their kind of way out of that. Where I wouldn't necessarily agree that would be the case, because I think they would, if it was allowed to go ahead somehow, I think they would find themselves in all sorts of legal bother with UEFA, and potentially face fines and all the rest of it, because that's what everybody's wanting. Well, Gary Neville the other day was just like, fine them, dock them points, fine them, banish them from the league and everything else. And I saw just maybe an hour or so ago that Chelsea are apparently preparing to like jump out of it or take their name off it or whatever. So if one goes, you'd imagine that it'll all domino and they'll all sort of fall out of it, having seen the reaction. Because it just seems absurd to think, we're just going to abandon the Champions League. And then if you watched the Ian Wright clip to camera where he just filmed himself in his car, and he was like saying his understanding was that players wouldn't be allowed to take part in Euros, the World Cup. It seems insane that they would then hold them to ransom, and players would just be under contract and they'd have to play in these sort of strange midweek European games against all the big clubs in Europe. I say all of them, some of them. I noted with interest Bayern Munich were nowhere near it, which in a sense doesn't surprise me, because I'm not a huge Bayern Munich fan. But they are a European heavyweight, and they're always there or thereabouts in the Champions League. And I do respect them as a football club because they are a historic football club. They aren't just like owned by a Russian oligarch or a sheikh or something like that, and just have money pumped into them. They're a proper football club. As are Borussia Dortmund. So it was interesting that they were nowhere near it, and I don't know. It leaves a really bad taste in the mouth, the whole thing, and there certainly needs to be something put in place to make sure, because you've got to think that if it does go away, and it does sort of fall like a house of cards, you've got to think that the idea is there and that they'll maybe come back and try and rethink it at some point in the future. So they need to put something in place to make sure that it just can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me as well, regardless of football clubs pull out of the European Super League now, they still deserve to be punished. They went that far. They've signed up contracts and stuff. And for me, it's this whole type of thing, again, as you said, it's what these oil people want, the American owners want. They want this franchise version of football. Your man Perez, the Real Madrid president, he's an absolute clampet. He's run about saying that kids aren't interested in football, matches should be longer to keep them on watching the football. You're like, what are you talking about, mate? And I'd say another thing as well, before we go to yourself, Anthony. Again, JP rightly pointed out, this is just about these clubs trying to recoup the debt that they've put themselves in by living above their means. If they're going bust, or if they're in financial difficulty, face the punishment. Take the punishment. Do not take the rest of the game and put it into disarray, and you have former players coming out, and rightly so, by the way, calling them out for what they are. Gary Neville, for me, nailed it. He nailed it. He called out his own club as well, which was absolutely fantastic on Sky Sports. It was a brilliant interview. If anyone hasn't seen it, please check that out. And you're looking at it from a fan's point of view. We pay enough money. I have BT, Premier Sports, Sky, just to watch Celtic. That's it, and you're paying nearly £1,000 a year in subscription fees before even you get a season ticket and stuff. It's absolute scandalous what these clubs are trying to do. And how are you feeling about it, Anthony, in regards to the Super League?
The Super League is just the latest Frankenstein's monster for these people, Stephen. And as much as I can't really add any more to my disgust on it than what the likes of Gary Neville and all that have done. They've kind of spoke up, but it's not just football that this is happening. This has happened when you give profiteers, because that's all they are. They're the owners of these clubs. They maybe want to win trophies, but their prime reason for owning these clubs is for nothing more than to milk it and the people that follow them for every penny they've got. And that's what it's not just happening in football, it's happening in every walk of life. When you give profiteers, bandits, conmen, unregulated power, this is what they'll hit you with. And it's happening all over. And I must admit, as angry as I am when I watched all the proceedings happening, I have to say Chelsea and Man City have pulled out of it, by the way. They've both signalled their intention to pull out. So hopefully this nonsense is hit on the head. However, UEFA were preparing on Monday to announce some drastic changes to the Champions League of their own, which was for no other reason than to milk fans dry again. I can't stand the proposals, don't get me wrong, but I have to say I have found some.
Still there, Anthony?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
He was on his soapbox. He was going off on one.
Don't have us playing 8 qualifying fixtures to get into your tournament. The UEFA care as much about us as what these bandits do that own these clubs. Football's been about money for a long time. I accept that the Premier League has some merit. It has sort of modernised the game a bit. But let's not forget the Premier League is a breakaway off its own in its own right. I accept that, it does still have promotion and relegation. But the Champions League itself, you can finish fourth in a certain league and you're straight in. But if you win a so-called lesser league, you got to play 8 qualifying games. So I take all this faux outrage with a pinch of salt. I really do. And it's happening in every walk of life. And I'm glad that it seems that fan power seems to have put a stop to it for the moment. But it's almost like the classic hand, isn't it? You go in, go in way above what you're actually expecting, take the hit, and then come back with some watered down version 2-3 years down the line, and allow that to happen. It's disgusting. It really is. They care. They have absolutely no interest in the good of the game, and it's not just these 12, 16 clubs. It's practically every club out there. I have to say, on different things, our club included, or the people that run our club included. It's not just these 12.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I must say as well, just before we continue, I think some of them oil people must have heard you, Anthony, because your audio cut out for a wee bit. But we definitely get the gist of what you're saying. I mean, UEFA, FIFA, Premier League, our owners to a certain extent, all these rich clubs, they're all to blame in a way. And this, as you said, this Super League is just another monster created from all the wealth and greed that's in football at the minute. And again, wealth wins for me at the moment. Wealth always wins in football. But I'm conscious of time here because JP has to go in a few wee minutes. So we're going to move to the quiz. And this is where it gets interesting because at the moment, I think it's 4-2 to us against the Celtic State of Mind guys. So if you manage to get this, JP, it's 4-3, and then these are definitely within touch of distance to yourselves. So again, it's 5 questions. It's first to 3. Not too technical about it, but it's just whoever wins. Really, it's a good old fashioned quiz. You guys ready, guys?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, just go right back to the roots then. Who founded Celtic Football Club?
Brother Walfred.
JP got it first. Sorry about that. What 2 colours are Celtic's famous hoop shirts?
Green and white.
Bingo.
Green and white.
Yeah, bingo, you got it. How many Celtic managers did Lubo play under, including caretaker managers?
3.
4.
Anthony got it. Oh. Martin Lee brought in 3 players on the eve of the European transfer deadline day in August 2001. John Hartson, Momo Silla, and which other player?
Steve Guppy.
Oh, JP got it. This is the decider. Who does Celtic knock out to qualify for the UEFA Champions League group stages for the first time in 2001?
Ajax.
Anthony! Yes! Yes!
I was there. Amazing.
Anthony got it. So at the moment then, that's 5-2 to us. And JP, thanks for coming on. Have you enjoyed your time with the end of Celts?
I have indeed. Thank you very much for having me on. Like I said, sorry it's not in more celebratory times for the club and as the supporters, but happily come back on when the grass is a wee bit greener.
And again, it's what we're all about. This is us a few guys just like we would down the pub having a chat about Celtic Football Club. And again, we appreciate everyone's support on YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, iTunes, wherever it may be. This is our 20th podcast, which is a milestone for us. We only really thought we would do a couple, but again, it's grew arms and legs, and we're going to keep going stronger and bring you guys more content. We recently had John Hearn on, a former Celtic player, a brilliant insight to what it's like coming up for the Youth Academy, playing for the first team. Tommy Burns stories in there with some funny pranks that Scott Brown and Tony Mulgrew involved in. So if you can't check that out, it's available across all major platforms. And Anthony, thanks to yourself for coming on. You'll be on the game in the future, no doubt, as a regular contributor. Thanks again, Anthony. And in the meantime, everybody, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.